Where are you based, Samantha? Are you in the Netherlands?
I'm right now in the Netherlands, but I'm based in the Berlin office.
Oh,
How
okay,
about
right,
you?
yes.
How about you?
In Crinan Street, London office. Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
But
yeah.
I'm it's a holiday for us here in the UK. Is it a holiday in where you are too? Yeah. So
Same, yeah, yeah.
I'm in West Wales at the moment. I so
Yeah, I went to the Netherlands because I spent quite a lot of time of my adult li life in the Netherlands. So
yes, yeah.
I have a lot of
You
friends here.
right. Ah, nice. Yeah, yeah. You'd did your is it Utrecht? You did your PhD. I just
Yeah,
looked you up. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah. Have you been?
Not to Utrecht, actually. No, many Dutch cities I've been to. I love the Netherlands. It's one of my favorite countries. It's my
Mm,
last place was Leiden. I went there last year
yeah.
on for a long weekend, which was beautiful, which is great. Yeah. So
Leiden is very beautiful too. Yeah.
mm,
So like a lot of the cities here I really like. A
yes.
lot of them are quite unique as well.
Mm, mm. I did a nice cliff top walk this morning because we drove to Wales yesterday, so we're staying in just near Tenby, which is nice.
Yeah.
Mm.
Staying for longer. Because are
Yeah.
you also off on Monday, right? It's
Yes,
yeah.
yes, I have Monday off. Yeah, and I'm just stopping in Cardiff on the way back to see a friend of mine, and then I'll go into the office on Tuesday morning from there. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
I've been to the office for a strategy week last year, like the London one. I was quite surprised by like I was like amazed. Like it was really nice, but like I had a lot of trouble finding my way around.
yeah, I've been there 8 years now, and I'm the same. It's just it's a it's a complete labyrinth, that building, isn't it? Yeah. Doesn't help having three different names for the bits that join it. Yeah, each bit of it's got a different building name, hasn't it? Which is
Yeah.
confusing. So yeah.
Yeah, and then
Um,
you think you know how to go, and then like, there's no entry on the one side, and then
So
you have to
let's
go all the way around. And
I know.
start
Yes.
our panel discussion. We have a great pleasure to have the editor, the Nature career editor, and also the editor of Nature Human Behavior to share their insights about the field of academic bullying, harassment, and gender disparity. So I always think that journal editors have a great role in increasing awareness throughout the community about the emerging, incidents of bullying and harassment, and informing public and other stakeholders about the issue. So I'm sure it would be very informative panel discussion. So thank you so much, David and Samantha, for accepting to share your insight with us. So let's get started with David. So my question for you, David, is that how willing are you in considering the submissions that you get about academic bullying, harassment, whether it's incidences or reporting emerging contextual behavior, and how you handle those manuscripts?
Thank you, Morteza, and hello, everybody. This is a great conference. Samantha and I were just in touch with each other. We don't know each other. We've only just met, actually, even though we're colleagues. And it's been the talks are fascinating so far. So, Nancy, what a hard act to follow. But yes, just to answer your question, I'd hope that in the careers section of Nature, are you hearing me okay, by the way?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I would hope that in the careers section at Nature, which I and my team lead, I would say, very, very willing to publish stories about bullying and harassment in academia and other sectors where our community work. I was looking just earlier this morning, and I identified 10 stories that we've done in the last couple of years that sort of very much speak to this. And I think overall, last year, for instance, we published 80 pieces of content in our section, in the career section, which touch on science and social justice, diversity, equity, inclusion. So we're very proud of our track record there. There's always more we can do. And I could talk at length about the processes. For those of you that aren't familiar with Nature, it's a journal of two halves in many ways. So one thing that I and my colleagues don't publish in the career section is original research. What we're really interested in are stories, mostly from early career scientists, about challenges that they faced in their career. And bullying and harassment is obviously a key one alongside many other things. I suppose I could throw this question back to you, Morteza, and say about the processes, because I think you're almost an honorary member of our team. You're very we've published you on many occasions. We publish news stories in careers. We publish feature articles. We have a podcast which we call Working Scientist. We do Q&As and other bits and bobs. So there are a variety of options open to us as editors to tell the stories of bullying and harassment. And we're just one team in the kind of magazine section at Nature. So we're a very small team. I'm just putting that out there because obviously there's only so much we can do in our day jobs, but we do have a very large news, features, comment, and multimedia team as well. So Nature's been going now for more than 150 years, and over that time, it's evolved. I would say very rigorous processes for publishing. So you can speak to this as well, Morteza, because as I've said, we've published you. But when somebody submits an article, and I'll just give one example here, which is one of the most popular sections we have are career columns, where we invite mostly early career researchers, as I said, from all over the world to tell their story. And we're very keen on a term that we call service journalism or solutions journalism. We really love to know what happened to you, what you did, what you learned, what you wish you'd done differently. So unlike our colleagues in, say, the news section that will come to bullying and harassment stories in a very kind of factual who, what, where, when, how way, they will mostly rely on, I would say, some sort of legal hearing or, the launch of a grievance or a report done by an institution or another organization, such as the NIH, into what's happened. We also do that. We're also very keen on just making sure that we tick those boxes. But I would say the success for us is we want to have our audience to have a takeaway. We want them to go away and think, actually, reading that person's story has really kind of enriched me in some way, that it means that actually, should I face what they've faced, I will have something in my head that means I can actually deal with this in a better way than I could before I read it. So those are and there are very convoluted processes for getting us to that point, including, as you all know, Morteza, many drafts of an article, lots of editorial oversight. I'd love to say it's only me that reads it. Before it goes live, it's read by many other people as well, all of whom have strong opinions. And it's my job as the editor to communicate some or all of those to the person that's written that article for us. So that was a very long-winded introduction, and apologies for that. But so in a nutshell, very keen to publish. We do sometimes say no. I think one time, Morteza, I said no to you because it just happened that the person that you wanted us to cover wasn't really from a scientific background. I think they were basically, I think they were in the humanities or the legal background, and it wouldn't say we'd instinctively say no to that, but I think we'd published something very recently. So that was one occasion I can think of. So I'll shut up now and let Samantha talk.
Yeah, thank you so much, David. So as a side note, when we get a complaint at the academic parity movement and we think that it would be interesting for other targets to also know about the case or the stakeholders about the case, I basically refer them to David and see whether they are interested in covering that story or not. So Samantha, I know that you and David have different views because David is more interested in stories and basically career narratives for individuals, and you are more on the research side. So the same question to you: how willing the Journal of Nature Human Behavior is interested in considering research or correspondence or perspective in the topic? And when you receive submission, how would you handle that?
Yeah, thanks, Matthias, and thanks a lot for having me. I think David already covered a lot of ground on how Nature research journals and Nature portfolio journals in general handle these types of submissions. Maybe just to give you a bit, for those of you who don't know us, so Nature Human Behavior is one of the research journals, and we are very interdisciplinary. That means we publish empirical work from across all kinds of different disciplines, as long as it's related to human behavior in one way or another. So it could be either individual human behavior or collective human behavior. So apart from that empirical content section, we also have a magazine, well, we call that magazine content section, which means these are all covered. There's different formats that fall under that section, but all of the formats are not primary research formats. So it could be either narrative reviews or perspective pieces, which are similar to narrative reviews, but a bit more forward-looking, or comments, so classical comments that you might know from other journals too, correspondences or worldviews that are much more personal accounts of a person's experiences. So as Nature Human Behavior, as a journal, we are very, very keen on covering all kinds of content related to either diversity, equity, inclusion. That includes also academic bullying, harassment. It can be critical accounts in both sections. So either empirical content, we're very interested in robust research on academic bullying or harassment, or any diversity, equity, inclusion related research. But similarly, we're very interested in covering those topics also in our magazine content. And Matthias, you also published with us a couple of times, a bit different to maybe what David said in his, like when he talks about the careers section in Nature. We have different formats, so we like to publish different types of pieces. So we like to have those more common kind of style pieces that are giving you a call to action. So that are not necessarily personal accounts, but giving you a call to action, like how can we mitigate academic bullying? What are like what can institutions, what can stakeholders do to limit the like the amount of harassment, of bullying, for example, any kind of in that direction, any kind of ideas. But we also are very keen on publishing personal accounts of individuals who have experienced bullying in academia, for example, or harassment. And especially if those are, so I don't, of course, every personal account is, and every individual account, every individual experience is very important, right? And it's unique and it should be taken seriously. But for us, when we receive submissions, or when somebody approaches us, they're like, oh, would you be interested in covering this? What we try to do is assess, is there a novel angle that we cover? Is there anything that we haven't covered yet, anything that is important to know yet, that has not been said before, which we find very important? And that is also coming from a lot of different individuals, not just one single person, because academic bullying is happening. And it's happening widespread, right? But not everybody likes to speak out about it, because people might be embarrassed, people might think that that it's a unique experience, or they prefer to move on and not think about it all too much. So what we try is to evaluate and how far there's something else to be covered here that hasn't been recently covered in our pages. And when it comes to how we handle those submissions, academic papers, like empirical papers, we handle like any other. We send them out for review. Obviously, we evaluate them first. We send them out for review if you see merit, and ask reviewers to comment on the content. When it comes to magazine content, the process differs a little bit. It depends also what type of format it is. So it's either editorially edited, or there's reviewer input that we seek, and we work together then with the authors to improve the work, to make it fit for publication. And in any case, we also evaluate, and I think that's really important, we evaluate any potential legal consequences for the authors. So even if academic bullying has happened, it can sometimes be very hard or difficult for authors to write that in a paper if it's not if there hasn't been a court case yet. So we evaluate that too, because we don't want our authors to be sued consequentially for something that they wrote in a piece for us. So in those cases, we, for example, would consult with the legal counsel and would make suggestions to the author, not to change their story, but to tell them, like, listen, we consulted and this might be problematic for you legally. So what we would suggest would be the following edit. So we try to be very sensitive when it comes to these papers and these pieces. But yeah, just to summarize it, we are very keen on these topics to be covered because we think they are very important. We have covered them in the past. We're interested to cover them in the future too, especially new angles, new stories. Yeah, to
One
kind of
follow-up
widen the
question
audience.
regarding that, Samantha. Do you have any kind of a specific precaution for selecting reviewers if you decide to send it out for peer review? Because sometimes in the field, at least from our understanding, we feel like that bullies have a mafia. They try to protect each other. Sometimes I tell to my colleagues at the parity movement that what we wish for, that having interdependent, strong collaborations between stakeholders to protect targets. Unfortunately, we have that to protect bullies, and it's systematic. So it's like a domino. If one bully goes down, probably others goes down as well. So how do you ensure that the peer review would be very fair process and you select right person and right people for that, and whether your judgment for the decision would be completely rely on reviewers' reports or not?
Thanks for the question. I think it's a very important question, and probably a question that a lot of authors have. And I know, I think all of us editors know that peer review can be challenging because people can be strongly opinionated. Unfortunately, there's always some individuals who might not provide very constructive or fair feedback. In general, for nature research journals, there's one thing that we do is that two things that I think are very important mechanisms here. So one is that we ask authors to give us reviewer suggestions. If they wish to do so, they can also decide not to, but also give us reviewer exclusions. So if there's any reviewers whom you know that they have a very different research agenda from yours and they will not be able to provide fair feedback to you, or if you have had past fallouts with a person and you really don't believe that they are being able to comment on your piece without any prior prejudice, you can name those potential reviewers as reviewers to be excluded. Of course, there's a limit to that. Like, of course, you can't name 15 people usually, because that would make it really hard and would also probably make it biased in the end. But we try to honor reviewer exclusion. So if you give us the names of a couple of people and you say that those people are in our view not fair, we try to honor those requests. And it's also important to keep in mind on the second point that we are professional full-time scientific editors. So it's our job to peer review papers, to evaluate them, to help the authors to get their paper through to the publication process. And it's not unusual for us to overrule reviewers. So we read all the reviewer reports and make a decision. And that can happen, and it happens on a regular, that we overrule reviewer requests or dismiss reviewer reports if they are really unconstructive or harassing, insulting to the authors. So that is something that we try to really be fair, and then, for example, replace a reviewer if we notice that a reviewer hasn't provided constructive feedback. Similarly, as an author, if you feel that even when you receive the reports, they are not fair, they're not constructive, they have been reviewers who are biased, who are prejudiced, and you think there's evidence in the reviews, you can always contact the editors, and in the worst case, even appeal. So if you think that they are so biased and so unfair that the decision was affected and probably in a negative way, then you can always appeal the decision, and the editor, and normally also the chief editor at least, will look at the case again and will make a decision based on the points you raise. So we try to put some mechanisms in place to protect authors from those insults and bullies.
Thank you. Thank you. So, David, what challenges do you see when you want to consider a story for your career column?
Well, yes, good question. And in fact, Samantha alluded to it actually. So she talked about sort of newness and freshness, and I suppose one challenge that we face is if the story is very similar to one that we might have published very recently, it might incline us a little bit more. So actually, this isn't quite one for us at the moment. And obviously that there are legal challenges as well. I mean, sometimes the kind of the downside of a column, which is by its nature sort of first person, is it's quite hard in a column to kind of get, unlike a news story, to get to get a quote or a comment from the organization that is harboring the bully. So you'll know as well, Morteza, from sort of your most recent encounter with us, sometimes things will be said and actually, is somebody potentially identifiable? If we can we name them? If we do name them, what is already out there in the public domain that kind of links them to this case? So those are the I'd say the legal challenge, and again, Samantha alluded to it. Is the main thing. So editorial balance, for want of a better word, with a first person column can sometimes be a challenge. And I suppose the other challenges, and it relates to one of the questions that was asked of Michael, is around trauma. I mean, I think it's one thing agreeing to write a column for Nature's Careers section, but sometimes the editor will have quite a different perspective on what to cover. So for instance, I know when you and Suzanne and Nancy recently approached us, that the story I was quite keen on was like, actually, what happened next? After what happened, how did you kind of move on from what happened to you? And we've published 2 of the 3 stories so far. So, in Suzanne's case, Suzanne Tauber, she'd had a year since her sort of dismissal, and the support that she got from a global community there and local people as well. So we were keen to cover that. But back to the trauma issue. I feel that we as a team in the careers team are quite sensitive to what we call re-traumatizing somebody, because sometimes our questions can be quite intrusive. They can be quite personal. They can be informed by things we might have read in the public domain. And Nancy alluded to it as well. I mean, it was a very sobering talk that Nancy gave about how sort of the mainstream press and I'm sure maybe some sort of professional titles as well, did or didn't kind of give her story the respect that she felt it deserved. So I'd say that was another challenge as well. Is actually I don't want anybody to come away from publishing in the Nature Career section and to feel pained by that, and that is incumbent on us to offer some protection as well. So to put it through the lawyers, if there is a risk that we as a journal will be sued, or around factual accuracy. So sometimes that can result, I would say, in us coming back to you and your colleagues and saying, actually, can you just sort of go into that again and tell us this and this, because we feel it was missing the first time around. So I'd say those were the key ones. Right.
And a follow-up question, have you ever encountered any kind of retaliation or, comments post-publication that is not kind of relevant to the published materials, but more on the retaliatory side?
Well, you know what? In a way, I wish we'd had more. Listening to Nancy, like I'm sort of thinking, have we been timid here? Have we not been courageous enough? But I want to give you 2 examples. I mean, nothing sort of from a very strong legal perspective afterwards. But we published a story, and I didn't do slides today, but there was. Can I put something in the chat maybe? Just a link to a story for people to just to look at while I'm talking about it. So I'm just going to find it. It is, this one here. So I'm going to put this in the chat. Here we go. I'm just going to send it to everybody. Have you received that? Is
Yes.
it there? Yeah, yeah. So just this story. This is an interesting one, and it's one of the stories that have you got it? Yes.
Yes, I'm
Yeah.
just trying to ask the team to put that for everyone.
Yes. I'll give you while that's happening. I'll slow down slightly. We published two articles in 2022 called "Bullied Abroad: How Foreign Researchers Can Fight Back," and this was. Are you okay? Yeah. Um, we were quite investigative here, so our freelance colleague did a lot of work collecting these stories of people that were developing their careers not in their home country, and in some cases, some very bullying PIs would bully them and then threaten them with not renewing visas and all sorts of terrible things. And interestingly, one of the unnamed perpetrators in this article came back to us with a GDPR request, a data protection request, because obviously he'd recognized himself and we didn't name him. And he basically outed himself and said, how did you get hold of this video? Have you seen this video where I'm, being, awful to a junior colleague? And we were able to say, well, yes, we have. And, the case was closed as a result, but they came into our sort of GDPR team. And the other example I was just going to give is kind of an ongoing one, really. And it's at the moment we're working on a story that involves a female researcher, and we who lost her job, and we have been spending quite a lot of time researching what happened to her and talking to other females that have worked at that organization. And basically, the organization has heard on the grapevine that we are looking into them. And they are sending, or have been sending, some very aggressive emails to us, copied into the editor in chief, copied into our head of legal counsel, saying that they want to partner with us here, but we don't want to partner with you because we're journalists here. We're not partnering with anybody here. Like we will come to you when we're ready to come to you. So, please stop sending us the emails. And, eventually they did do. So I wouldn't say it was a negative thing per se. And in fact, it was kind of reassuring thinking, actually, why are they behaving like this? It was kind of interesting. So, anyway, we have ultimately gone to them with a very targeted list of questions saying, we've heard that you did this. Can you comment on that? Why did you do this? What was the point of you doing that? And so that I would say that's the closest we've got to negative stuff. But mostly, we're very proud and happy that these kind of stories that we publish get the traffic and the engagement that they get. And just thank you to everybody that's at the conference today that's worked with us already. And I hope we can work with more of you in the future.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, David. And Samantha, one question for you. One of the contextual behaviors of bullying and harassment is conflicts and abuse of authorship. And sometimes it's so obvious. For example, we encountered many cases that a person was named as first author. And during the revision, there was quiet conflict between the authors. And then you see that their role, although the manuscript received a minor revision, gets relocated in the mid co-authorship. Just wanted to see whether you encountered the same thing in manuscript that kind of have been submitted to Nature Human Behavior. And if you saw such a cases, how you would react to such changes, and whether there's an editorial actions for that.
Yeah. So to answer your first question, or one that I personally have not encountered is as an act of retaliation. I have encountered manuscripts, and it's rather common, where author order changed or authors were dropped, either in the empirical content section or in the magazine content section, where authors, after one round of revisions, weren't on the paper anymore. And in those cases, our editorial assistant will ask all authors to provide confirmation that being dropped. They are agreeing, and they confirm that they were aware of being dropped from the author list, and or they are agreeing to the reordering of author ordering. Of course, we can't ensure that there was nothing in the background where they were being pressured to being moved from as a first author, for example, to third author, fourth author. But we are trying to at least prevent that authors are being dropped from author lists, or reordering happens without authors being aware of it.
And the very same question I've asked for David. Did you also encounter any retaliation for the published manuscript in the field of bullying and harassment of any kind, like giving emails or other actions?
In preparation for this meeting, I also looked into our content. I asked around in our team if they had any interesting stories, any important points to share, so that I can come prepared. But so far, we haven't experienced any backlash, any negative. We didn't receive negative comments as a consequence of publishing content on academic bullying and harassment. Yeah, so we have not.
Okay, so my last questions for both of you before we basically open the panel for questions is that in your mind, what would be the ideal journal in considering the cases of bullying and harassment? I mean, I'm sure that both of you have some limitations from other departments that are involved in the journal publishing. But what would you imagine as an optimal journal that support targets? Let's start with you, Samantha.
Yeah, I think as editors or as journals, we have quite some things that we can do, right? So I think as first of all, very importantly, I think it's listening and understanding the problem and the existence of the problem. So David and I being here today is already, I think, a very important step for us to understand the problem, to understand the extent of the problem. So I think that is important. Also, that's related to that, asking ourselves, what can we do? So maybe also talking to community members, is there anything that you feel that we could still do, that we could implement in the publication process and how we handle manuscripts to protect authors, to protect other individuals from academic harassment or bullying? And following, we can take a clear stance. We are independent journals, and I think it's important that we take a stance against bullying. Whether that would be, for example, in policies or editorials, for example, also implementing things such as author contribution statements. Those are not big steps always, but they are helping, I think, to create a better environment to hold people accountable and responsible for the contributions that they make. And lastly, I think what David is doing, what we are doing at NHP, is that we cover these topics, that we cover them continuously, that we cover them by different people in different formats, that we cover individual stories, but also cover pieces or stories on the structural and systematic problems, if they exist. So I think that is important, and ongoing conversation and dialogue. Yeah.
Thank you. David?
Yeah, but yeah, for me, it's similar to Samantha, really. It's about kind of not dropping the ball on this topic. It's very easy to think, oh, like, what can we say that's new and fresh about bullying, harassment? And I've been on this call now for an hour or two, and I've already got a couple of story ideas. Like joining the session when Michael was talking, and he mentioned that it's been 10 years since that the book that he alluded to has been in existence, and I found some of his data very, very interesting. So it's basically talking to you, Morteza, and people like on the call today to keep reminding us that there are fresh angles always. There are new ways of looking at old problems. We spin many plates in the section like everybody does in their day jobs, and the other things I'm keen to cover this year are stuff around research assessment, stuff about racism in science. Nature did a special issue a couple of years ago, and in the careers team, we never really sort of stopped doing it. I mean, we were doing it before, but we're launching a series very shortly about individuals who have championed kind of initiatives in their workplace to sort of tackle racism at work. These are just a couple of ideas, but it's also to remember that we shouldn't stop covering bullying and harassment stories. So yeah, just keep talking to us. Really, I would say keep inviting us to events like this, and make yourselves available for us to kind of sense check. You are the experts. I'm a generalist. I'm not an expert on academic bullying. So if I have an idea, like that, I want to be able to contact one of you, and you can tell me whether it's a stupid idea or not, and we can take it from there.